Welcome to the MAB Archive, where we have another interesting item in our collection that we think you might enjoy. My name is Matias Bombal, and I think that this interview that I did when I was just starting out in television, about 22 or 23 years of age, I was working for KSCH-TV, Channel 58 in Sacramento, California, and what follows was my very first satellite interview. Now, to tell you how that works, a satellite interview is something where the talent at the given TV station that was at that time carrying, or the syndication of, Siskel and Ebert throughout the United States, would have a chance to sit in an audio booth where they just had a microphone, and in front of them, right where you're sitting right now, I was able to look into a television monitor. I had the mic and the television monitor. I was having my very first satellite interview, and I was very excited. I had a higher-pitched voice. I was very excited to talk to Siskel and Ebert, and all I could see, where you're sitting right now on that monitor, were color bars. That's what color bars looks like right there. And matter of fact, those are the actual color bars I was looking at in anticipation of talking to Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert and interviewing them for Channel 58. Well, what followed was a very interesting interview, and because there is now a new movie out about Roger Ebert and the wonderful scope of work that he did for film awareness, which is really singular, I thought it would be very interesting to see this interview and the interesting questions that they answered for me. However, I was very young, and I was just learning my craft. As a matter of fact, this whole interview started in a much more frightening way. But we're going to save that for the end of this recording in the MAB archive. Let's start with Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert in the early 90s. I'm sitting in this booth looking at a monitor. They can't see me, they can only hear me, and I could see and hear their responses. As I looked into my microphone, the first question I asked was, what movie was the most divisive for them? Or, should I say, what movie were they most adamantly opposed in opinions on?
Probably that would have been Apocalypse Now in 1979, among major movies anyway, although we disagree all the time on a personal basis about all sorts of things that we fight about incessantly. But in terms of movies, Apocalypse Now.
Well, I think that actually we weren't as far apart as we've been on some, where we had like a 4-star and a 1-star review. There was a case with Apocalypse Now where I felt that I got caught up in the failure, I thought, of the ending, and so I gave. I
think we were fairly far apart, Gene. I picked it as the best movie of the year, and you voted thumbs down.
Yeah, and then I fairly quickly started to change on that,
yeah,
and
10 years
was
anyway.
Flexible. No, I went back on that and said that there are things in there that were obviously worth seeing, and okay. But there have been pictures where we've been so far apart and still remain so, and I'm trying to come up with one, but I can't right now.
Now let's go back a bit. What was the first film that either of you saw in a movie theater that you can recall?
I think it was, for me, A Day at the Races with the Marx Brothers. And I think that my favorite scene in that movie was Harpo playing the harp. I had never seen a harp before. I had certainly never seen Harpo before, and the combination was fascinating. More fun than anything Groucho said, that's for sure.
I think the one that got me probably earliest was Dumbo. I remember being terrified when he was up there at the top and with that feather, and I think kids are pretty much often riddled with fears. And I think that movie certainly played into those fears. Also the loss of a parent, the fact that your mother is chained up and taken away from you. I mean, that was very heavy stuff. I know everyone has this experience with all the early Disney animated features. For me, it was Dumbo that really shook me apart and gave me a little hope when he does fly.
Well, moving right along from that concept then, what do you think would be the film that has most affected your life and or careers?
I think that the film that affected me the most was probably The Third Man with Orson Welles and Joseph Cotten, a 1949 movie, but I saw it in 1962 on my first trip to Europe in a little theater on the left bank in Paris. It was absolutely filled with people. It was a rainy day. And the reason it affected me wasn't so much what was in the film, but what was in that experience. Because up until then, like a lot of college kids, I had gone to the movies on Saturday night on a date, or I had gone for fun. I hadn't really realized that in a certain sense a movie theater can be a shrine where old movies still live and where we can go to see them again. And that changed my orientation toward movies. I think it kind of taught me that movies were an art form.
I had an early experience like that with seeing A Star is Born, the 1954 version with Judy Garland and James Mason, George Cukor directing, and as a young kid, 8 years old, I remember saying that the colors were so rich, and also the anger between the adult couples. It was like one of the first adult film that I really saw, so they let me know that movies were something special. And then later on, a college experience, seeing Blow Up, where we would have a discussion that lasted for 2-3 days over what did that film mean. Let me know how profitable and exciting it could be, how rich films could be, and worth talking about them for a long period of time.
Roger, you talked about the experience. Would the both of you make a comparison between presentation in theaters today versus your earliest recollections of movie-going?
Well, when I went to the movies as a child, it was more of an event. Whole families went together. They dressed up a little bit. Certainly there was a big screen. There was a balcony. There were a couple thousand seats, and it was truly larger than life. Today, I think the movie theaters in many cases have gotten a little tacky. The multiplex, where you can hear the other soundtrack leaking through the wall, the screens that are not really very big, have diminished the movie-going experience. And I like to see really big screens, and I also like to be a part of a really big crowd when possible.
Yeah, I think those are the major changes that we've had. It was special going to the movies. There was a feeling of, maybe this is still the same for kids, that this was an adult activity, because I remember getting a quarter for admission and a quarter for refreshments. It was up to me to choose. And I think that may still be, but the presentation is the biggest thing, where the sheer size of it, if it's just an oversized TV screen that kids are seeing now, if it's sort of pedestrian looking inside, shadows on a wall of, industrial architecture, then I don't think movies are communicated as something special. So I try and take my kids to only movies that I know are good, and second, to the biggest screen that I can find in Chicago with the best presentation. And I want them to know that movies are majestic, and it's hard to get that today.
Well, keeping that in mind, what would the two of you see as an ideal double bill to introduce not only people to the great experience of going out to a movie in a theater? What would your ideal double bill be? And I'll play it at my theater in Sacramento.
Wow.
I'd love to see Singing in the Rain and The Third Man on the same double bill.
Carol Reed and Stanley Donen. Wow. And how about you, Gene?
Well, I know that I would want 2001. Because if ever there was a movie-going experience to lose oneself in, that was it. And that I would not make that the opening act. That would be the closing act. And you know what? Probably Some Like It Hot, because I want people laughing. I would say that's my favorite comedy. So open with Some Like It Hot, finish with 2001. If that doesn't tell people that movies are great, I don't know what would.
That certainly should. Gentlemen, we thank you for being on KSCH-TV and adding a great deal of wisdom and enjoyment to the movie-going pleasure of thousands of viewers across the country.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Matthias.
Well, there you have a fascinating interview from two wonderful and talented film writers who are gone, sadly. What follows now is how the interview originally started, which was both the most embarrassing moment in my life and the most educational in my broadcasting career. I've been hesitant to share it for a very long time, simply because it's absolutely horrendous what I did, and I'm very embarrassed about it to this day. However, because of the interest in Roger Ebert and his great career, and now with a recent documentary about his life, the new and renewed interest in Roger Ebert forced me to share this program that you're watching now here in the MAB archives. So, we're going to share with you the part I had never wanted to show anyone. As a matter of fact, the original master tape at the KSCH-TV studios was booked by me shortly afterwards, and this interview was never broadcast before. What happened was this. I was in the sound booth, ready to do this interview. I'm looking at a monitor, which is right where you are right now, with color bars on it. This is what the color bars look like over here. And since I was looking at that, I didn't think that Siskel or Ebert could hear me. I knew they couldn't see me. There was no camera on me. Because the way these things work, you know, is that they do these satellite interviews with all of their affiliate stations, and a local talent at the local station asks the questions. That's what I was doing. That's how this interview existed to begin with. And what would later happen is that you would take the video of them answering your questions and your original questions, which would be in a separate sound channel, and you would photograph yourself on a set in your station asking the questions, and it would be cut together so it looked like you were all three in the same room together. This is a kind of hocus pocus done by movie publicity, and still done by movie publicity, and it has been done for years and years and years. Anyway, so I'm sitting there. I'm talking to my producer, Steve Hallowell, who's saying, no, maybe you should do this. The engineer is saying, well, we have this, we have the satellite here. They wanted a microphone check. Could I give them a microphone check? An audio check, please. So I start babbling about whatever enters my brain. I was involved in old theaters, and I wanted to, and I was so, at that point in my career, I was so interested in making sure that the people I interviewed knew that I had read up about them and knew about stuff, because I wanted to prove that, of course, I knew something, so they knew that. Of course, that is a fatal error that young people make all the time when they start doing interviews. The truth of the matter is, you ask a simple question, and you say nothing else, and wait for the response to blossom into a wonderful nugget that people will enjoy. But you only learn that through experience. Here is the unfortunate and inappropriate remark that I said on my sound check that I thought was only heard by my engineer, but as you will see, was heard by Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert. It was a remark about Roger Ebert being the biggest movie critic in television. I regret this, and will to my dying day, because look at me, I'm certainly no shrinking violet in the plus sizes. But this is how you learn things, folks. Here is my horrible and yet wonderful moment with Siskel and Ebert.
Anyway, I've restored this movie palace, and I'm in the process, was an old Fox West Coast theater, the Crest in Sacramento, and I'm in the process of working on another theater here in town. Just to give you a little background of the voice that's coming to you from Sacramento via this marvelous and curious new technological marvel that television is. Technological marble, which is different than marble, of course. I've also noticed, Roger, you eat a lot, don't you? You are truly the biggest critic in television. But that's neither here nor there.
Yes, the pan.
Your pan pot split?
Yes, 100%.
Well, I suggest we take the satellite audio off of this.
Okay, that's easy to do. And
Can't you just...
then he won't be able to hear.
Not necessarily.
Oh, there they are.
What's he going to hear?
What I'm thinking is feed it over into... Can't we come out from the rack panel?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can talk like this, and that's exactly the way I
Testing,
will.
testing, testing.
They're getting...
We're getting a feedback problem. Here, we can...
I can hear them discussing their feedback problem.
Okay, can we have them talk?
Yes, I'll be
Can
happy
we have
to
that
talk to you.
They're
card
talking
buzz?
now.
Buzz?
Can you hear them?
No, I cannot
Yeah.
hear them.
We
Now
can
is
hear
the
you.
time for all good men to come to the aid of the party.
I can hear them now.
Okay, we've got them. Okay, we got it.
Get an audio check from them?
Yeah.
Hang
Could we have an audio check, gentlemen?
You bet.
Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of the party.
Thank you very much.
And we also enjoyed your monologue about Roger. That was very good.
Yes, why didn't you mention that Gene was the baldest man in television?
Well, I'm sorry, gentlemen. My apologies. But it has been a great pleasure to enjoy what you've been doing on the air, and I don't know if you heard any of the other stuff. I was babbling for a mic check.
We certainly did.
Every word.
Every single word.
But as I've restored a movie house in Sacramento, as a matter of fact, 2. I run a revival cinema, double bills and whatnot, and have really appreciated what you guys have done on television, because it brings people to the conscious idea that, hey, let's go out to a movie instead of being stuck at home after a piece of pizza, or, that whole mentality of let's go to a movie and then do something else instead of a whole night out. So thanks for keeping up the great work. So let me begin just briefly. I have a Sunday night show, 8 o'clock, where I introduce Hollywood classics on television, and aside from doing the theater business. And we air your program here on KSCH-TV in Sacramento Saturdays at 5. So at the end of this piece, if we can get you to do an ID for us, we'd really appreciate it.
Fine.
Okay, let me just go right into it then, gentlemen. We're here with Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune and Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times, known to millions of television viewers as the idols of the airwaves of cinema criticism, here on KSCH-TV 58. Gentlemen, let's get right down to brass tacks. What has been your most adamant disagreement of all time?
Probably that would have been Apocalypse Now in 1979.
Thanks very much.
Matthias.
And, gentlemen, if we could have an ID from you. The show airs Saturdays at 5 on KSCH-TV 58.
Okay.
Why don't you just say the names?
Siskel and Ebert, 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoons in Sacramento on KSCH.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. And one last thing, I'll let you go. I leave this entirely up to you, but as I said, I have a Sunday night program where I do classic movies. Could you give me either a rating, a thumbs up or a thumb down, Matias, Sunday night at 8? If you can't, that's okay, but we'd like it if you could.
We can't, because we don't give thumbs up to anything but movies. It's sort of a hard and fast
We could
rule.
mention the show, though.
Okay, well, that would be nice. Watch
Okay.
Matias, Sunday nights at 8 on TV 58. Matias Bombal is the whole name.
Okay, here, ready?
Sure.
Watch Matias Bombal, Sunday nights at 8, KSCH, for great movies.
Thanks a million, fellas, and good afternoon. Keep up the great work.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Murphy, can you hear me?
Yes.
One problem with this unvarying two-shot is that I'm left staring at the camera while Gene talks behind me. I suggest that you push in to a close-up of the speaker and then just zoom out again when the speaker is finished.
He understands.
Because I don't know where to look when Gene's talking.
Right.
Hi, Donna. Is this Donna Dee? Okay.
Hi, Donna. Gene Siskel, hi.
So there, perhaps one of my most embarrassing moments in broadcasting and my most valuable early lesson at about 22 years of age, when you're young and you think you know everything, but like Mark Twain so clearly said once, when he left home, he thought his parents were idiots and returned 40 years later, surprised to find out how much they had actually learned. This tape that you've seen today, transferred to the electronic media in which you're watching it now, here in the MAB archive, would not have existed at all but for an unusual accident. The original 3/4-inch tape at the TV station, KSCH-TV in Rancho Cordova, was destroyed by me. I didn't want any record of this to last because I was really so embarrassed. So this footage has never aired anywhere before this very showing that you're watching at this time. But an employee of the station, for the Christmas party that year, secretly dubbed a VHS copy of the master prior to it being bulked by me, this unknown by me. And this floated around for some time in their home. Well, they had moved several times, and suddenly they said, "Oh, I've got a tape of yours." Didn't say much more about it. They handed it to me, and I read the label, MB's Goof-Up Interview with Ebert and Siskel. The tape was covered in a little bit of mold, And the door from the VHS was gone. There's big, ugly stretch marks throughout, which you've, of course, seen here, which we did not correct. This is the only extant original master of what you've seen today. But for this, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. So thanks to that intrepid historian who saved my most embarrassing moment in broadcasting and my most valuable lesson. I hope this video and this presentation has been amusing and interesting for you. And please join me for my current cinema reviews, something I learned from Roger Ebert in this very interview. Something you just saw there was his famous audio check. Now's the time for all good men to come to the aid of the party. Ever since this moment in my life when I'm asked for an audio check, I remember Roger Ebert with thanks by using that audio check. Now's the time for all good men to come to the aid of the party. This is Matias Bombal. Join us at mabhollywood.com, and thank you for visiting the MAB archive.